Hello, I'm Matt Hume. Welcome to the channel. Today I wanted to talk through a detail that we had worked out on a house that we built a couple years ago. Every once in a while you come across this special moment in the design of a project where you feel like you can work out a detail that you've been thinking about in your mind for quite a while. This house, the Delora house, had this really unique situation with the roof overhangs where we wanted the detail to come down to like a nice clean line at the very edge of the building roof. And it's a craftsman style A-frame. And we felt like this roof skirting detail was going to work out really great with the style of the house. One of the things that we did was we came up with a custom detail where the lower metal section that covers the roof at the eave and the upper asphalt section kind of seamlessly come together. So today I wanted to take a minute and just go through a hardline sketch of that detail to explain some of the intricacies of the detail and why it's special, and to just kind of express that through finishing the sketch. So I'm glad you're here with me today, and I hope you enjoy this detail. So I'm just finishing the hard line of the sketch right now. I've kind of got the basic overall sketch complete. There's just a few minor details that I have to finish up real quick, and then it'll be ready for adding color. Basically, we have the exterior wall, which is here in the sketch. Then we have the 2x12 roof rafters that come down off the roof, and this was a very steep pitch roof. You can tell by looking at the sketch that this was like an 1812 pitch roof. At the very base of that 2x12, we had this really kind of cool moment where we notched the 2x12 lower, and that allowed us to apply the sheeting down lower once again. So you can see these two lines right here represent the cut through that sheeting, and then it jumps up right here, and then the sheeting continues up the rest of the roof. And what it does is it gives us this unique little gap, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in just a few minutes. So as we work on the sketch, we try to get as much detail into it as possible with the hard line. One of the final steps is putting a little bit of line work or hierarchy into the drawing, and it just kind of helps you understand like what is being cut through and what's not being cut through. And basically, since this is a wall, a section of a wall, it's basically the upper corner of where we transition from a wall to a ceiling condition, or a wall to a roof condition. We're cutting through the drywall on this side. This is the interior of the space here. And then this is the exterior of the space here. And you can kind of see that we're cutting through some of the exterior materials, so we can see the shingles being cut through here. And then this is where that detail, that transition happens. This is the unique moment in this detail. What's kind of neat about this is when we made that cut in the 2x12, which allowed us to drop the sheeting for this lower portion, the skirt portion of the eave, it allowed us it made it so that the metal thickness of the metal panels, these are the metal panels here drawn into the sketch, they kind of come down, and you can see they're hemmed at the bottom to kind of cap it off. And we call this a knife's edge. You know, there's no straight fascia or anything like that. It just comes down to a nice clean knife edge along the bottom edge of the roof. But by dropping the sheeting down like that, it allowed us to accommodate the height of those standing seam metal panels. And by dropping that down, you can see there's a little flashing detail here. It's a steel flashing cap that caps off the top of those metal panels below. And that little hem right here, you can kind of see it right here. that's purposeful because that transition piece that goes from the steel to the shingles, that little hem is necessary to keep it so it's a nice clean line. If you were to just put a piece of steel roofing flashing on there, it would be kind of wavy. But just that subtlety of that little hem right here will give you a nice clean structured line, and it makes a nice transition from the steel to the shingles. So now you can see we overlap the shingles over top of that. The other unique thing about this detail is that just underneath the sheeting for the shingles right here, you can see this double line. That represents cutting through a air baffle. So we're ventilating the underside of the roof surface using this detail as well. This little hatched thing right here represents a piece of, it's like an air barrier or it's like an air filter, if you will. It keeps bugs and things like that from getting up into the air space, the ventilation airspace, but it still allows air to flow through it right here. And that exists underneath that top transition steel piece right there. So what happens with the air is normally it would come up from the eaves right here. In a conventional detail, it would come up from here, the soffit, and it would move up through the roof. But what we've done here is we've utilized this custom detail to bring air flow into the bottom side of the roof. So air basically comes up off the roof, swoops in, and then goes up the underside of the roof sheeting, keeping the roof sheeting nice and dry for as long as this building is standing there. And that'll help with the longevity of your roofing materials. It'll help guarantee that they're dry. It'll also keep the underside of the roof cool so that the shingles will last forever and they won't burn off. So this was a really fun detail. Also, we did do spray foam in this entire building. Spray foam's a really good option for making a really tight home. It was conventionally framed, which means we stick framed the entire building, but we went through and we added spray foam, which often is just kind of represented by a rough line in a sketch, because when they're spraying foam in there, you're never going to get nice clean lines. It's going to be kind of rugged if you've ever seen spray foam in a cavity. So when we represent that in a sketch like this, we just kind of use simple, kind of rustic lines to represent what would be spray foam. So now that we've discussed the hardline nature of the sketch and the overall structure of the sketch, aspects of this particular detail that I really enjoyed, I want to sort of move into making the sketch a bit more clear just by adding some color to it. And so that's the next step in this, developing this sketch. So to begin the color, I just kind of lay a base layer of marker in there. That gives me a sort of base or a backdrop, if you will, to sort of begin to develop the color and tone. So I start light and I progressively get darker and darker as I layer more of the marker in. And along the way, I'm kind of switching colors to represent different materials. Switching to a green here to represent the spray foam, which can be green, it can be yellow. It depends on the project and the type of foam they're using. Oftentimes we see green on our projects. So I'm using a lighter brown to just signify the cut through the 2x materials. So these are the two top plates. And then down within the space or between two of the 2x12 rafters, we've got these blocks that were cut and fit. And these blocks here are intended to give you something to be able to attach your soffit material too. And in this case, that was also like a Johnson's pine material, which is just a really beautiful tongue and groove pine wood board that we use to finish the underside of the eaves right here.
Mr. Hume, what is a soffit?
So a soffit panel, as you can see here, is basically it's a finished material that stops anything from moving into the cavities of the spaces between the rafters. Oftentimes your ventilation happens here and it goes up through the roof. So a lot of times it's like a vinyl soffit panel. In this case it's wood, but the ventilation begins here and goes up through the roof. But like I was discussing earlier, our ventilation strategy was kind of unique here because we had this offset that occurred and we were able to bring air in that sort of unique detail, in that unique moment within the detail. So this is one of many fun details that we get to work out almost on a daily basis on any given job. This one in particular has always been kind of special to me. It was a very successful detail. The house is thriving and it's doing a really good job. The house is holding up really well. The detail is holding up really well. And it was just an exciting moment within the design process when we were working through the actual details of the project, and we got to exercise some of our special skill sets to make something unique and kind of cool. And to the everyday person that just passes by the house, usually the reaction is, oh, that's a really beautiful moment. But there's so much time and effort that goes into those simple, beautiful moments within any given project. So I'm glad that you were able to come with me today and I could explain this detail in a little bit in a more thorough way, and hopefully you understand it. So when looking at the sketch, kind of finishing the sketch with some of the coloration, it's really meant to just bring some of the darkness into the sketch and some color to just kind of bring it to life. And you'll notice that the color of the green sort of emphasizes what's being cut through as far as the spray foam. You can see here, this is the inner drywall that's applied to the studs on that side. And it depends on the material and the way you decide to represent it, but like when you cut through drywall, oftentimes it's just a little bit of a stippling effect that they show in the cross section. Spray foam is always kind of an oddity. You can use hash marks, you can use any kind of way to represent it. In this case, we just simply used a green color because that's the color of the foam that we used on that project. With sheeting, if it's wood sheeting like plywood, that's often shown as like even like a horizontal hatch, or it'll be a diagonal hatch. And in this case, we're kind of using a little bit of that and some color. I used a simple brown color to sort of pop those areas a little bit. And then I used a lighter brown color to sort of emphasize, lumber, like, not sheeting, not like an engineered product, but lumber that's being cut through like the top plate of the wall, and some of the blocking that we had discussed, and then some of the trim details for the LP smart siding system that we used here. I switched to like a pink color to represent the air baffle right here. This is where that air is being scooped up to the underside of the roof sheeting. Those air baffles are often pink or blue or black. They can be anything. But that sort of color differentiation in the sketch kind of helps call that out a little bit. And then I'm just going to add one more little splash of color here, and it's this piece right here, which I didn't explain yet, but this is what we call an insulation dam. So this vertical sheeting right here is often like a polyiso board or something like that that's cut to fit in place, and then it's usually foamed into position as well. That polyiso is usually like a yellow color when you cut through it, so I'm going to go ahead and use a yellow to sort of emphasize that. And every time I add a little bit of splash of color like that, or the pink or the green or anything, it just kind of brings the sketch to life. It makes it that much more special, as opposed to just a simple hardline drawing, which is kind of what we're used to when we look at these things on a set of blueprints. But yeah, that's the detail. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please join us on our next one as we explore some of the other details and some of our other projects, and we'll see you next time.